Thanks, everybody. It's great to be here. Good morning, everybody.
Morning. What time is it now in Utah?
It's just a little after 7.
Wow. So thank you. Really morning, really early. So thank you for having be here with us.
Thanks for the invite.
Just a quickly reminder here. Pessoal, se vocês têm uma pergunta, levantou a mão ao final, já vão anotando. Se você online tem uma pergunta também no chat, por favor, façam. I'm just telling them that to make some questions if they need. So, the stage is yours.
Okay, awesome. I just want to say thanks for the invite. This is really exciting being able to speak here at this event and to this audience. I think as we get excited about the Portuguese translation of the book that I co-authored with Bob Rossman, Designing Experiences. And I just love to see the growth of experience design around the world. I think one of the things that I love most about experiences and the topic of experiences is how it connects people around the world and across industries, right? We might not have experience designer in our job title, but there's just this sense that we recognize the importance of experiences. And even though you might be in different industries, if you meet somebody who gets experiences and believes in the power of experiences, it's almost like you already have this common language. And I just love that. I love being able to talk about experiences and think about ways that we can do them more intentionally. So I'm excited to share a couple of things with you and then have a conversation at the end. And my goal is to really connect the idea of experience design to this other idea of experience intelligence, and to share a couple of frameworks and examples that I hope that you can find applicability in the work that you're doing, regardless of the context in which you're actually designing experiences. So let's first talk about this idea of experience intelligence. This was, I think, the first time that I saw the use of this term was by James Wallman, who's the founder and CEO of the World Experience Organization, and his book, Time and How to Spend It, where he talked about this idea of experience intelligence. And this is something that I thought about, and Bob Rossman and I are writing about in the follow-up book to Designing Experiences. But simply stated, it's the ability to intentionally design and engage in experiences, right? This is another reason why experience design is so important, because it's not just about us as the designer or the stager of experiences. It's also about us as individuals, right? Because we're making decisions every day about the experiences that we engage in. And, you hear different terms thrown around, like the experience economy, which Joe Pine and Jim Gilmore introduced, which has been really influential as we think about the economic role of experiences. But you also hear terms like the data economy or the information economy. And recently I read a book called The Siren's Call by Chris Hayes, and he talked about the idea of the attention economy, and that we live in a time where our attention is being commoditized, where brands and platforms are trying to extract and then sell our attention to the highest bidder. And the reason that I bring this up right off the bat is because for an experience only exists if somebody pays attention to it. We can design an amazing experience, but if people are on their phones or people are distracted by something else, that experience isn't going to happen. And so as consumers of experiences, I think it's really helpful to think about our own experience intelligence and how we are deciding what we pay attention to, because there's so many screens and opportunities and different things that are calling for our attention. And it's really easy to find ourselves giving and spending our attention unintentionally. And so experience intelligence is important for us as individuals and also as designers and stagers of experiences to recognize that we're competing with a lot of other things that are calling for people's attention. And it requires us to up our game and be even more intentional with how we design experiences. And so I hope I can give you a couple of tools and frameworks to think about that. And I really want us to think about experience design as a discipline, right? Now, the term experience design has become more common over the last couple of decades, but people have been thinking about and designing experiences for a long time. They just didn't have sort of the language or maybe the awareness of the importance of what they were doing. And so I think thinking about it as a discipline is really important. This isn't just sort of one-off thing you do every once in a while, but this really is at the core of what like any business does, is provides internal and external experiences. And because of its core economic importance and because it can be a strategic advantage, we really need to think about it as a discipline, not just something that, you know, we change our customer service division, the customer experience, and think that we're now sort of doing experience design. And so this figure here outlines how we think about experience design as a discipline. And at the core is this foundational knowledge base. And the reason why this is at the center of the framework is to recognize that people have been thinking about experiences for a long time, right? Aristotle was talking about what type of experiences do people need to have to live the good life, right? It wasn't just about consumption, but it was pursuing activities and interests that built you as a person and contributed back to society. And he was talking about this idea of eudaimonia, right? The good life, right? Beyond just sort of hedonism and pleasure, but that there's a greater way to live and thrive, right? And ancient religious texts and philosophers over time, and more recently, psychologists like James Dewey in the United States, or even more recently, like the positive psychology movement, where you have Barbara Fredrickson and Martin Seligman and others who are talking about the psychology of happiness, that it's not just about the absence of mental health struggles, but it's really thinking about how do we thrive? How do we engage in experiences that promote human thriving? We look at behavioral economics and nudges that move people towards behaving in certain ways that are going to be better for them. It's better for people to have to opt out of a retirement plan at work as opposed to opt in, for example. So you see all kinds of different disciplines that have been thinking about experiences. And what we've seen over the last, really, I think over the last 5 to 7 years, is this awareness across disciplines of, like, other people are talking about experiences, and what if we as experienced professionals and researchers found each other and collaborated and shared and built community and expertise around experiences? And this is something that gets me really excited, seeing gatherings like this, seeing the World Experience Organization. There's now an Experience Research Society. There's a variety of different gathering places, really international gathering places for people to come together and talk about experiences. Ida and I met at the World Experience Summit in Brooklyn last year, and we would have never met otherwise without sort of these gathering places to come together and talk about experiences. And so as experience designers, we're not just we don't need to just make stuff up, right? There's a rich foundational knowledge base to be able to pull best practices and pull theories and things that have been tested and shown that works. One of the projects that we're working on here in the Department of Experience Design and Management at BYU is that we're building out a research to practice website to be able to synthesize relevant research findings and make them available to professionals, so you don't have to, go through a bunch of like research articles and try to see what's relevant, but just sort of distill down the best research to actionable points. So foundational knowledge base. And then there's a paradigm, really viewing the world from an experience lens, and recognizing that just as the cell is the primary unit of analysis if you're in biology, that an individual experience is the unit of analysis for an experience designer. Then there's a process of designing experiences using human-centered design principles. There's strategies and competencies drawing upon this knowledge base. that we can use proven methods to design experiences, and also think about the competencies that we need people to have who are engaging in our experiences, and then the management of the experience process. So both the staging of experiences, but then also of collecting data and understanding how people are responding to the experiences that we're providing. Walt Disney would often say, as they were building Disneyland, that everything in an experience speaks, and you want it to speak in harmony with each other. So you want to be able to think, okay, like what's the message that our experience is conveying? What is our experience saying? And what do we want people to say about our experience? And are those things in harmony? And you don't know until you ask people and hear the stories that people tell about your experience. And this is a cyclical process, right? And so we don't have time to talk about all of these pieces, but I do want to talk a little bit about the paradigm and some strategies. And so this is the experience type framework. This is something that myself and colleagues here at BYU and Bob and Marcel Bastiansen at Breda University have been working on for a while. But I think from a paradigm perspective, we have to recognize that, yes, everything is an experience. You pay attention to something and you have an experience, right? But not all experiences are the same. And if we are going to design experiences that we want to be impactful, we need to know how to define them. And I think early on, when we started doing our work here at BYU, we recognized and saw that terms like memorable, meaningful, and transformative experiences were just sort of thrown around without really saying what they were, or just sort of loosely defining them. And so over the last 7 years, we've done a number of different studies and continue to do work in this area to really say, okay, what are these things? Because I believe you've got to be able to define something before you design it. And it's one thing to, let's design a table or a chair, something that's concrete, but to design an experience, that's an abstract thing. And so we really have to define it clearly. So let's jump into this. So the base component of any experience is attention. So you pay attention to something. That's an ordinary experience, right? And most of our experiences are ordinary, and that's okay, right? You probably can't remember what you had for breakfast 17 days ago, unless it was something unique, or something went really well or wrong, or was a particular birthday or event. So we have a lot of ordinary experiences that don't really leave any type of impact. But when we have, and our brain is constantly, we live with a constant stream of consciousness, right? As we pay attention to things, our brain is sort of segmenting things. This was breakfast, this was driving to work, this was this meeting, this was a conversation on the phone with somebody. Anyways, and so most of those sort of little conscious segments are ordinary. But if a moment evokes emotion that could be positive or negative, we remember it, right? The emotion, our brain sort of says, okay, you're feeling something, let's timestamp this moment. And that experience then becomes memorable. Now, if we find ourselves reflecting on that experience, right? You're going to have some emotion over the course of this day with this event, right? And if you find yourself reflecting on particular moments during the experience, right? Something was said, you felt something, you got excited or worried or whatever the emotion might be, and you find yourself reflecting on that more, there's a chance that you're going to pull some insights from that experience. You're going to reflect and think like, oh man, this really, maybe I should do something different about this aspect of this work project, or maybe I need to talk to this person and there's I want to share something with them, or a variety of different insights, and not just an insights of like, oh yeah, like I learned, how to tie my shoe differently, but insights that have like personal relevance and meaning, right? And if that happens and that experience becomes meaningful, right? And then as we all have meaningful experiences in our lives, we think back like, yeah, I really learned something from this moment. If those meaningful experiences, if we find ourselves telling stories about those experiences, they almost become like this set of like short stories about our lives and why we do what we do, and believe what we believe, and are connected to the things we're connected with. And So if those experiences get picked up in what we'll call our narrative identity through storytelling, that's when we start getting to transformation, right? And it might be transformation about behaviors or attitudes, but even our identity, right? And so if somebody asks you, how did you get into the career that you're in? You're going to think back through your life and you're going to select certain experiences along the way. And you're going to use those to tell a story about who you are professionally, right? Or if somebody asks you, how did you get into this hobby? Or why do you like this, right? We're going to tell stories about those things. And the experiences that get picked up into those stories, those have become transformative stories for us, or transformative experiences. And we might not have known in the moment when those experiences happened that they were transformative, right? This usually evolves over time. I think there's very few in the moment transformative experiences that lead to like capital T transformation identity change, right? There may be experiences where in the moment we think, wow, this has changed me. I'm going to eat healthy from now on. And then 2 weeks later, we're not, right? And because time changes everything with our perceptions of experiences. Something might seem like it was memorable in the moment and not be memorable a couple of weeks later, or vice versa. Something might seem ordinary, but as you reflect back on it, for whatever reason, you think, wow, that was actually pretty memorable and meaningful. And as we've done research on this, so we've developed measures to ask people after experiences about, did you experience emotion, insight, and change? The framework holds up really well. It's really rare for somebody to be like, oh yeah, as I think back on this experience, it changed me. And to have them also not say it impacted, there weren't insights and emotion involved, right? It's really like you need to have emotion. And then from emotion, you can extract insights, and then that can build towards change. And what's also interesting, when we ask these questions about emotion, insight, and change, and we collect NPS data, so Net Promoter Score, how likely are you to refer this experience to a friend? We see a nice correlation that as we move up sort of these steps, that we also see NPS scores move up. And what's cool about that is, with an NPS perspective, you get a score back and it's like, great, we can sort of see how we compare to our competitors. And we can look into the qualitative data and see what people are saying, but the numbers alone don't give us a really clear sense of, okay, how do we increase this number? But when we look at measuring emotion, insight, and change, it does, because we can see, oh, we're like doing pretty good. Like people are experiencing emotion, but we don't get above that for many other people. And so if you want to increase brand affinity, you need to start thinking about insight, opportunities for insight and change. And what's key here is those mechanisms of reflecting and storytelling, okay? So if we go to then sort of the strategy perspective of experience design, and we want to move from ordinary to extraordinary, we need to start thinking about how we help people remember, reflect, and storytell in the experiences that we provide, and not just during the participation phase, right? Like I like to think about experiences in terms of the anticipation phase, participation phase, and reflection phase. We're not just designing the moment when people have the experience, when they come to the event, like the one that we're participating in right now, right? There's been all of the lead up to that, and then we're going to leave and go home afterwards. Now, we experience, if you're just focused on the participation phase, people are still going to anticipate and have a reflection phase. But it decreases the likelihood that they're going to be able to engage fully in the participation phase, and that they're going to be able to then actually take what they learned or felt, or the stories that they're starting to formulate, and incorporate those back into their at-home everyday life, right? And so if we as experience designers can think, okay, what can I do during the anticipation phase to prepare people to participate? And then how can I continue to help them reflect on their experience after they leave? I sometimes think about that transition as going through customs if you're traveling internationally. And sometimes there's things that you can't take from one country into another country. And I think that happens with our experiences where we might have these emotions and insights and this desire to like change or do things differently. But as we go back to our regular context of life and work and all of the things, that can get washed away because there's so many other things calling for our attention. And what seemed like, oh, I'm going to hold on this for a long time, it quickly gets washed away. And so as experienced designers, I think we can start thinking about, what do we want people to remember? Which really means, what are the emotions that we want people to feel during our experience? And just as you'd have sort of a brand style guide, and we want them, we want the font to be this, and we want the colors to be this. What's the emotional palette that you're working with? What are the emotions you want to target along the way? Then you want to think about, like, what are the insights that we want to have people to have? And when are we giving them opportunities to reflect? Because research suggests that we're not naturally reflective people. Most of us don't write in a journal every day, right? It's just, for whatever reason, not hardwired. And as designers, we often think we just need to put more and more and more and more and more into an experience. And I think we actually need to like scrape more out and leave more windows for people to reflect. And that we need to be able to ask questions or give nudges that are going to let people think about, like, hey, this happened. Like, how do I unpack this, both individually and collectively? Being able to reflect on things with the people that you did it with is really, really important. And then finally, how do we help people tell stories? I think this is maybe the most important part. If you can do the emotion work, you can get the insight piece. How do you do storytelling? And this is a big part of my research, looking at how telling stories brings people together, and the neurologically how we respond to telling stories and listening to stories, and thinking about how you can help people become storytellers of the experiences that they're having is super, super important. Okay, I wanted to save some time for questions. That was sort of a lot, but happy to chat about whatever people want to chat about.
Matt, thank you so much. I have to tell you that mantra, that stare, is my mantra today, right? That stare became my mantra, because I think we have to think about how can we go from the ordinary one to the transformative one. So that's my mantra. And I've just told them, Matt, that we are proud to translate your book, right? The Designing Experience to Portuguese.
About that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Really excited.
We have two questions here, Conrado. Wanna start?
Hi, Matt. Yes, I have. We are in a corporate world here, so people are thinking in KPIs. Why not?
Mm-hmm.
And so the answer here that we have is, how can we evaluate the individual impact about an experience? And PS, form, what kind of questions or any other option?
And let me add just a small thing here, Matt. So we hear a bunch of people that works with learning inside the company. So how can we evaluate, for example, a conference in terms of experience? How can we say that it was not ordinary, it was transformative? Is there any chance to do that?
Yeah, totally. I mean, this is often a question, like, how do we measure return on experience, right? And I don't think there's just a magic, like, one question to ask, right? It goes back to this anticipation, participation, reflection idea of saying, okay, what is it that we're actually measuring, and what can we measure right as soon as an experience is over, right? So again, if we can target, if it goes back to thinking about what are the emotions that we want people to feel along the way, right? We want people to feel excited. We want them to feel awe. Whatever those emotions are, and then to say, okay, what are the insights that we want people to have, and then what's the change that we're hoping to have, really? And it might be just like the behavioral intention, right? So there's those specific things we want. We should be asking questions about that, right? Did you feel this? Like, did you have this insight? Are you planning to do anything as a result of those experiences? Those measure like that, the specific outcomes, and we should ask questions about that. We should know that this is the moment of the experience where we want people to feel X. And this is the moment that we want them to have this insight, right? And to measure that. So those are sort of those direct targets. And then we can measure, I think we can ask like about emotion, insight, and change. Like when in our studies, that's basically like, did you have did you feel any strong emotions during this experience? 1 to 10. Did you gain any insights? 1 to 10. Did you have any desire to change or experience change? 1 to 10, right? So we measure those, and we measure NPS, like I was saying, so that you have the specific targets that you're measuring. And then you have these other outcomes like NPS. And then if you already have data saying like, well, we know that when people are an 8, 9, or 10 on NPS, we see these types of purchase patterns, right? And so if we can then say, well, the event, we had people, 40% of people said they experienced, 8, 9, and 10 on change. We know that's going to link to NPS, and we know that NPS then links to this other thing. So it's rather than like one measure, it's being able to link data from like individual moments to the experience to broader KPIs that the company matter. So it's sort of like a custom evaluation setup depending on the experience and the organization.
I had an amazing insight here because usually we do the surveys, right? How was the speaker? 1 to 5. How was the
Coffee break.
Yeah, that's right. So if we can insert emotions in this, right? How are you feeling now? Do you want to transform something in the next days? So it's really amazing insight, comrades. Conrad. I call Conrado de comrades.
So I have a couple of seconds forward. I have more questions here. We're going to send in to you. But there's one here. What kind of experience the designer need to have in order to expand its repertoire to produce memorable experience? Basically, how to gain more, not knowledge, but experience and repertoire in a broader sense. What would be your hint?
Yeah, that's a great question. We're all designing experiences, whether we know it or not, right? I heard this great analogy that every day when you wake up and look at the weather and decide what to wear, you're designing your experience for the day, right? It's cold, I'm going to take a jacket. It's warm, it's raining, I need an umbrella. So we're constantly sort of thinking about this. And so we're doing unintentional experience design all the time. I think one of the most important skills in an experience designer, again, to recognize that the individual unit of experience, and rather than just say, okay, I'm going to have a meeting, here's my agenda, to really start mapping out the experience. And that's as easy as getting some Post-it notes and on the wall or on your desk, be like, okay, let me slice this experience down into all of its moments and say, in this meeting, yeah, we have the agenda, but really, what do I want people to do beforehand? And what are we going to do? What's the first thing that we're going to do? Maybe we don't just jump into the agenda, but we have sort of a moment to check in and ask how people are doing. And then what's this next moment? So it's like mapping out the touch points of experiences that we're already providing. That's one row. And then have a reaction. What's your desired reaction? How do you want people to feel at each moment of the experience? What would you hope they say, right? And just mapping out the touch points and then the desired reactions of experience, it will start giving you ideas about things that you can tweak and do better, right? So mapping out experiences you're already providing, it's going to get you in an experience design mindset and give you ideas of what you can do more intentionally. And there's lots of resources about experience mapping, and there's things that I could share as well, but it's a pretty straightforward tool, but I think it's really powerful and insightful, both for mapping out experience you're currently providing and mapping out experiences you aspirationally want to provide.
Matt, thank you a lot.
So much, Matt. Thank you.
A lot of insights, a lot of structured knowledge. So we're waiting for the book to be translated in Portuguese. I hope to see you again next semester. Thank you a lot.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks so much. Great being with you.
Bye-bye.
Good luck with the rest of the event.